provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that decisions of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County Community Oversight Board may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under common law writ of cert. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision of the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met. Thank you. We are in front of us here. We have again an agenda that has quite a bit on it, but purposefully each thing on there is purposeful and has a reason to be on there. I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time and just acknowledge. I know that Mr. Sweeney is at a national board meeting that takes place once a year. I'm not sure about Mr. Holloway, but I'm sure he'll join us if he can. And then I also believe that a few members, one or two members, need to ensure that they're departing right at 6 o'clock or thereafter, and we'll be very thoughtful of that so that anything that needs a vote is done ahead of time. There in front of us, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, we have 9 members of the board, so certainly have quorum as well. I'm going to go straight into the chair remarks. I need to offer an update and then both the 3 items listed and then the 4th one that's not listed. So shortly after our last meeting, October 4th, so a couple of things, actually. I was smart enough today to take notes. So shortly after our October, second meeting? It was the second when we met together. After that meeting, I reached out to Mr. Whedon and I told him that I'd like to have time to come in and just meet with the COB staff, the MNCO, right? So our staff, and ensure that outside of this space here, there was just an opportunity for them to share anything that they felt that I as chair should be aware of to be helpful, and also that maybe perhaps the board could be helpful in providing, whether that's training, resources, or things down the line. I also wanted to ensure that there was a space of anonymity so that they felt comfortable expressing opportunities where they thought there could be strengthened, right, without thinking there would be any type of retaliation or any problem at all. And so we met over a lunch period, had lunch, broke bread together, and I asked them 3 questions, one around the strengths that they acknowledge that amongst themselves and outside of the space, 2 opportunities or weaknesses, but I really see them as opportunities for improvement. And then the 3rd one was, could you just share with me what resources or what do you think it's going to take to get you to the point of sheer success, right? And so from that space, and I also told him, I said, look, I'm not bringing these notes in. In fact, I destroyed them right after the fact. I just wanted to see if there was a thread. None of them saw each other's messages. In fact, right after I read them, I put them in the shredder so that all that was left was just my notes of it all. What I did take was very shorthand notes. I called Mr. Whedon and I talked to him about the themes that I found in the space. And I'm happy to share with the board that along the strength space, it was very clear that our staff, the COB staff, the community staff, has a great deal of excitement, commitment to this work. That was on the page over 6 or 7 times. Very happy about the diversity of experience and background of both the staff and the leadership team. And also there was quite a bit of mentioning around just excitement and opportunities around what is to come once they have all the tools that they need to be successful. I pointed out, too, that we're really excited about the NACOL conference, and I think we remember when Ms. Ross and Dr. Hildreth came back and shared with us, and thank you for those resources because I've looked through them myself, about the wealth of information they received there. And so certainly that's a conference that we would recommend the board of future years support the COB staff and maybe 1 or 2 members of the board attending. And then around the weaknesses or opportunities, there was the need to have a stronger line of internal communication. They wanted to have an opportunity to have a space to engage with Mr. Whedon, and we talked about that. Since then, Mr. Whedon has established weekly meetings with the staff as well as with his bi-weekly meetings with the staff, but also weekly meetings with his executive team, and spaces in that. And I'll tell you the truth, when we got to the resources, it was really around wanting to make sure they had as much of a cohesive unit as possible. So Mr. Whedon certainly has the details of that. If anyone should have it, it is for Mr. Whedon to have and to execute. I did ask him along those lines, though, as chair, there were 4 things that I wanted to see right away happen. I asked him to convene a strategy session amongst himself and the executive team so that they could develop a multi-year, at least 2-year strategic plan so that the staff, they would have the tools that they need to have a path forward. I also asked them to reach out to the mayor's office, whether it be the mayor himself or probably a designee, to have a set monthly meeting. And I also noted that if that needs to be the mayor mentioned, I'll come to this, and look who walks in, the new Metro legal director, then that certainly works too. But I just noted the importance of us having a dedicated and open line of communication. And then the last part of it is, so the development of the plan, convening of the executive team, and then the establishment of the reoccurring meetings, which is taking place already, right? I'm not saying that this is the end-all, be-all, but as chair, I thought it would be important that I not just receive all of this and do nothing with it, but we figure out a way to help activate it. And it does land first and foremost in Mr. Wheaton's space to execute, right? I did share with him also that we are looking to see quick turnaround on this because of how important this work is. And so we have talked about connecting once a week over the next 4 weeks. We've been meeting kind of bi-weekly as it is to ensure that progress is moving in the right path space and forward. I also, so that's that meeting there. I did say to the staff, I told them whether it's individually or as a group, that I would be more than willing to always come in to listen and to be as instrumental as I could in engaging both the board to be supportive and others as well. It's important that we support the staff, but let's be honest, we've been gung-ho about doing that from the very beginning. We have spent an untold number of hours supporting the process as we search for our ED. And once we voted and appointed Mr. Whedon, we made it very clear that we wanted to do what we had to, even if that meant a meeting every week until we got this done correctly. And nothing's changed in that regard. In the space of the October 8th meeting with the Mayor Cooper, I'm skipping to number 3 just for a moment. I sent the board a detailed account of that meeting. And I just really, and I don't know, Mr. Whedon, has that been uploaded to the website yet? The snapshot that I shared with the board?
Yes, the recap.
The recap has? Great. So it's on the website for everyone to see? Great. Thank you so much. So in that recap, I shared with everyone our 3 main points. I'm not going to go back over it and acknowledging here. I just want to make sure that everyone understands. When we walked in the room, the mayor asked us, he said, how can I be helpful? What do you need from us, from me? I said, we need 3 things, Mr. Mayor. We need access, collaboration, and action. And I detailed for him what each one of those meant. In the access space, I made it very clear that the COB, our staff, did not need to hear about meetings taking place after the fact that we should have a seat at the table for. And that includes whether it's body cameras, whether it's police engagement and response, meetings that, quite frankly, the COB has been a part of in the past. We wanted to ensure there was continuity in our presence and our invitations extended. The mayor said he certainly understood. And since then, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Whedon and Mrs. Fitcher, you've been looped in on many of those communications since then. So we've seen that progress there. I also talked to him about access around the IT programs and software that our staff is having issues receiving. We acknowledge that, there may be a process for us to get around some of these things to expedite it, but that if we continue to run up against red tape, we would really appreciate someone from his office that could assist us. The mayor kind of slowed us down there, asked us to confirm that we were requesting a liaison specifically from his office or from council. We said both, because there is times when we would need someone directly from the mayor's office, and also times, in fact, where we would need to have a liaison from city council, metro council. We did make that request, and since then, we've received the communication and contact from the mayor's office. I believe Mr. Whedon has been, of course, the primary point of contact, and there's a meeting that should be scheduled rather soon. Is that correct, Mr. Whedon?
That's correct.
Okay. That's correct? Okay. Yes. Thank you. I thought you were saying something else. So in the collaboration space, the bulk of that was around the MOU. And quite frankly, look, there was no mincing of words. The fact that the chief is stonewalling and continues to make excuses about why he won't participate or what participation looks like for him. The mayor said to us that he felt that the very best way for us to move forward was to have the two entities, so COB and the police and the chief, convened on behalf of the Metro legal director. He said, look, this is something that needs to be handled in this way, and that's the way we should move forward. At the time, all we knew of that space was certainly, Mayor, we look forward to it, but all we kept pressing upon him is we need progress. And we impressed upon him the importance of having a vocal proponent in this space. And then I mentioned here that we straightforwardly explained that the greatest impetus to success and progress that we are having is, quite frankly, Chief Anderson's unwillingness to participate. Since then, we've received emails. It seems that Chief Anderson, whether he shows up here or not, certainly knows when these meetings occur, because he emails us every eve of our meetings, it seems, right? We all get the board gets an email, just for the public to know, every Tuesday afternoon around 3:45 in the afternoon. Long, very exactly, voluminous, like crazy long email from the chief, detailing what he very easily could come and share with us here. And by the way, we did extend a formal invitation to both the mayor and to Chief Anderson for this meeting ahead of this week. And then the last piece, we talked about action. So we extended a standing invitation to the mayor to address the community at any COB monthly meeting. Even extended to him that we would be happy to move the location. Of course, it's somewhere more convenient. I would assume the historic courthouse. But that more than anything, the public certainly needs and wants to hear from him. I used the phrase productive, positive pressure, right? Like, we want pressure, and we want, it will continue to extend it ourselves. And then commitment, right? I have said this before, vocal commitment that the mayor is in support of the referendum that the city voted in. And at the end of this communication, look, we ran out of time, but we did get through all of this, understanding there was more to be said and more to be done. I said to the mayor, I am more than comfortable if it's a matter of Mrs. Fitchard and Mr. Whedon meeting with a member of his staff moving forward. We just simply wanted a member of the board there for the introductory opening part of the meeting. If the board feels otherwise, I'm open to that as well. But more than anything, we need progress. And I've impressed that upon Mr. Whedon. I told him that, quite frankly, I do not want the calendar going to 2020, and we haven't made meaningful progress. Now, since then, our staff has met with Chief Anderson. We'll hear more about that very soon, about what came out of that. But I wanted to make sure that the board received, and I'm glad to hear the public has in front of them too, what took place on October 8th. In the continuous improvement space, I'll make this short here. This topic has been on our agenda probably the last 2.5 months or so, right? It's either been on our main agenda or it's been on our executive committee agenda. It is important that every single person connected to this energy and this effort here is working at its best and highest level. So I'm not going to go into the weeds of this. I'm sure the board, and if anyone didn't receive that letter I BCC'd everyone on yesterday, I've had several conversations with Mr. Whedon about what transpired over the last couple of weeks. And let me just make this very plain. We met on October 2nd. That was a Wednesday. On the Saturday, right? So what is that? That is the 6th. Yeah? No, 5th. No. October 5th, Mr. Whedon went before City Council and presented on the priorities of the COB. And from what I understand, the invitation asked him to present on the priorities of the COB over the next 2 years or 3 years or maybe more than that. I was not aware of this meeting. This wasn't included in the executive director report. Therefore, we didn't have an opportunity as a board to discuss the details of what we might have wanted to be shared and explained out in that meeting. Furthermore, I'd had conversations with, so after I found that out, I reached out to Mr. Whedon to confirm this took place. I had a conversation with him on Monday as well and explained to him the importance of communicating, at the very least to the chair so that it can be shared out to the board quickly what's going on so that we can inform and ensure that we are sharing a positive message of what we want shared out, right? And Mr. Whedon said he absolutely understood. We had I think a very positive, productive conversation, but for very obvious reasons, it was problematic to me that we didn't get proper notification because that was an opportunity that we've now missed. So on top of that, I've talked to Mr. Whedon about the quality of the executive director reports and the meeting minutes being delayed, not just delayed, but having errors in them. And I shared with him that while there are many members of the MNCO that, of course, as executive director, he is expected to lead this space. And that first and foremost, in any leadership position, you look to the leader for a structure. In the letter that I shared with you all, it's a one pager there. I detail out, and there's no issue at all. I'm happy to read it out too, but I make it very clear that we want nothing more than the success of the MNCO, and with that, Mr. Whedon's success as well. I should share with everyone that I've not only just shared that out, but I've shared it with Mr. Whedon as well. He's had an opportunity to read it. I also explained to him that it would be on the board to make the decision whether or not we agree, are in agreement, or there's a vote that passes that this formal warning be instituted. So I'll stop there and take questions there because I felt it appropriate for us to talk about this first. Ms. Ross and then Dr. Lewis.
I think that you need to read what you share with the board.
Sure.
So the community can have knowledge.
Absolutely. I got you. Dr. Lewis, were you saying the same?
No, but you go first.
Okay, got you. I absolutely agree. So I will read it, absolutely. In fact, I think I said in my email that I plan to. Thank you, Ms. Ross. So it reads as such. So it's to Mr. Whedon from the Metro Nashville Community Oversight Board. Date is Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019. Dear Mr. William Whedon, this letter is a written warning for unsatisfactory job performance. The Community Oversight Board, COB, recognizes the importance of its mission and also acknowledges that having a Metro Nashville Community Oversight staff led by a strong executive director is integral to meeting the stated purpose and objectives of the COB. The Community Oversight Board, led by its chair, Ashley Davis, has continuously offered an open line of communication and accessibility as an opportunity for Executive Director Whedon to request the necessary training, staffing, and any other support necessary for the increased and maintained success and efficiency of the MNCO. Since the Executive Director's appointment, Chair Davis has sent detailed emails and convened in-person meetings with Executive Director Whedon to counsel him on systematic, organizational, and process-related changes aimed at improving the Executive Director's communication, response time, and technical abilities. In both monthly COB and Executive Committee meetings, the Board has publicly discussed the importance of improved and consistent communication and went so far as to amend its current bylaws to ensure that the Executive Director understood the importance of submitting a final Executive Director report to the Chair for review at least 1 week before scheduled COB Board meetings. To date, Executive Director Whedon has missed each submission deadline and has only submitted the required report after being contacted by the Chair with a reminder. The COB is issuing this formal warning to Executive Director Whedon that the following actions and inactions should either not occur or be improved with strategic actions and plans. Number one, lack of communication to the board or board chair when time prevents the larger board from being notified of meetings with elected officials. Number two, late and error-filled, both content and grammatical, executive director reports and COB meeting minutes. And three, submitting of reports and other materials to the COB that the executive director has neither reviewed nor proof before disseminating said materials to the board. The Community Oversight Board is committed to supporting the executive director of the Metro Nashville Community Oversight staff, and this support requires the zealous and professionally astute decisions and actions of the executive director. The COB also acknowledges that the establishment of a newly formed Metro department brings forth both expected and unexpected obstacles, and the COB will continue to be understanding of said obstacles, but only to the point where fervent effort is being made by the executive director to avoid unnecessary pitfalls and reoccurring issues. Furthermore, the COB is only able to offer its help and guidance when it is properly informed of these pitfalls experienced by the MNCO. Notification of such occurrences should be brought to light through questions posed by the board, should not be brought to light through questions posed by the board. Communication and notification by the executive director to the board is essential. The COB issues this warning to Executive Director Whedon and requests that he be prepared to share at the November 2019 monthly COB meeting a report showing the corrective action taken to improve the stated insufficiencies. The report should be submitted to the chair of the COB within 5 days of the November monthly COB meeting. And at the bottom is a line based on the board's approval for the chair to sign and date. Thank you. Dr. Lewis.
So with regards to this letter, I was on the Human Resources webpage for Metro Government, and every employee is supposed to have an annual evaluation. They also have a structured performance improvement plan memo. Are you considering that along with this?
Right, so I've reached out to Mrs. Hall. I asked for a conversation, a second round conversation. One, I just want to make sure this was proper, that I could send this to you all before I did. But we have not talked about that. I certainly will. I will follow. I think it's slightly different, and perhaps only slightly, because Mr. Whedon is an at-will employee, and that's what was explained to me by Mrs. Hall. But I will follow up with her, and I can do that.
I would certainly expect even an at-will employee with failing performance would have to document improvement.
I'll talk to Mrs. Hall. I will. Ms. Ross, did you have? Oh, excuse me, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. Sorry.
I just wanted to center another part of this conversation while we were talking about it. We're also experiencing a structural failure from the people who are supposed to be in support of this board. So I don't want to, when I was reading this, I know that we're having a performance review on Mr. Whedon, but I also want to just shed light on the context on which that performance is happening in. Without the proper support, without... I agree. So if I could say it like this, I feel like it's not a personnel issue. I feel like it's a structural failure.
You want to detail that more, Mr.
Yeah. What's the structure failure?
I mean, so, these are waters we've been kind of treading for the last 5 years, and I don't really want to be repetitive in the way that we've been addressing this issue to the board, but this stonewalling effect has a tremendous effect on people's personal relationships, especially when you're on the front line. I've experienced a similar thing with even organizing on the ground. When it comes to this stonewalling effect, it starts to affect personal relationships. You start to carry it around. You start to feel kind of like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And you almost may second guess your dedication to what you're up against. So I just wanted to center that as well while we was having this conversation about Whedon. You know, I think two things can exist at the same time. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any other members of the board? Any questions? Statements here? I recognize some of us had to leave early. Dr. Hilder. Listen.
Thank you, and I want to thank Mr. Member Campbell Gooch for naming some of the discomfort I felt last night and to talk about structural impediments. The nature of this, the board received this email about 11:30 last night, right? So we're all trying to labor under the totality of it. And I was a little bit concerned about how we have this conversation now. That being said, particularly hearing you reread it, and I'm following along with the text version, Mr. Campbell-Gooch, your concerns notwithstanding, timely filing of notice to the board is absolute and immutable. Something as simple as a public official says, I want to have a meeting with you. You pick up your phone and hit speed dial to the chair and say, a public official just said I wanted to have a meeting. That's the kind of notice that I think takes care of one of these. The other is, could understand if maybe getting notes to you, getting notes to the chair 7 days prior. With our rapid turnaround, we've been having meetings, it seems like every 7 days. So, you know, there's some challenge there, and I could see in a performance improvement plan that any move from 10 days to 5 days, et cetera, something could just see progress. So I think that there's a way that we're building muscles, because these muscles for some structures do protect us all against these other stresses. And we, the board members, cannot come as a cavalry. I mean, many of us have our constituencies. We have our tools for communication. We are ready to be deployed, but also because we are law-abiding citizens, we're not checking in with each other when we're not with the public. Have to be clear about that, so that if the executive director does not notify the chair and the chair does not activate a communication, we can't help the community do the job that we were tasked to do. So I do think that it is important to set in writing our concerns around notice. And that is the only part of a sort of reprimand that I'm prepared to sign on to. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Ross?
Yes, I'm concerned about the minutes. I received the minutes maybe Saturday or Sunday, and they were a lot of errors in it and repetitiveness in it. So my concern is the minutes. Who's reviewing the minutes? And then you're sending them out without Mr. Sweeney reviewing them.
And Ms. Ross, I'll just acknowledge they're similar. We actually spoke this morning at 8:30 and 9 o'clock because I asked how were the minutes planning to be, taken this time around. I didn't want the same procedure that's been used before to be used. And in fact, we talked before that they're looking into like what type of software could help with expediting it. But to your second point, though, there's really no excuse about having so many errors in the minutes, right? And I'll be very frank, I think that Mr. Sweeney is unable to be here, can't speak for himself, but has been rather frustrated as well because he has not had the proper time to review as secretary to then turn them around, right? And so in all of this, I mean, to Dr. Hildreth's point, this is trying to build a muscle here so that we're able to function stronger here. But you can't get there unless you call it out. And I'll tell you, as your chair, this is probably the hardest thing I've had to do as your chair. And I do apologize for 11:30. I did not sleep much at all because I have been agonizing over this for obvious reasons. Because let's be very frank, media will pick this up and write what story they want, right? Those that are not opponents of this energy and space will take what they want. I have to be concerned about the larger spirit of this purpose, right? And in order to be successful, there inside of me, something told me like we have to put in writing what's just not working right now. And there's a couple of things that's not. Dr. Lewis?
I want to thank you for doing that. I've been extremely frustrated by the sloppiness, and I didn't know if other people were or not. So I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. And I just want to point out to Dr. Hildreth, your point around notice, and I absolutely agree with you. What sent me a bit over the edge is that Mr. Whedon received the request to appear before the city council on September 26th. And so to have that notice so far ahead of time and to then prepare an executive director report and then it not be included, I couldn't excuse that. And I made it very clear that that wasn't okay, Dr. Hildreth.
Then perhaps there needs to be an amendment in this language because that date is significant.
I will.
September is prior to the last time that we convened as a board. So if you are telling us that not only did we not receive it, but we did not receive that as a part of our meeting
Right.
last, then
That was really the big.
thank you.
The point.
And I do thank you for the 11:30.
Yeah.
And I actually mentioned that to indicate once again the commitment and effort that's being expended by all of this. It was no way meant to be.
No, I take it's okay.
Thank you.
I took it in love. It's okay. In positivity. I understand. I just want to call out the amendments to understand. I will adjust I will include the September 26th date. So heard someone saying, I want to make sure, I'm trying to take notes here about what we wanted to make sure was adjusted. Ms. Ross, did you have a recommendation as well? Or I think it was Dr. Hildreth who was saying what portion of it she supported.
Mine was just the minutes.
The minutes portion of it, okay. With that, is there a motion with the addition or revision, or rather addition of the date? Is there a motion here?
I would also do a formal performance review plan included with that.
Yes. I will talk to
Maybe we'll
Ms.
put the timeline on it also.
With the timeline. I'll meet with Ms. Hall as soon as she can make time for me, and we'll communicate that as such. With that, is there a motion?
I move that we issue this letter with the proposed, I think, 3 items of amendment to be a formal improvement plan, include the timeline of the September 26th meeting, and the minutes need to be athleticized, as I say in the rules and bylaws.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. 1 second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Any focused discussion? Any additional focused discussion? We'll take a voice vote, well, not just a voice vote, but a call vote here. All those in favor, please say aye. I'll go start with Mr. Cooper.
Aye.
Dr. Hildreth.
Aye.
Chief Turner.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Martinez.
Aye.
Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
Aye.
Ms. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Marsh. And I as Chair Davis, aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Board, we're going to move now to the, I should point out very clearly, I did state to I told Mr. Whedon that he is, and I think it's appropriate, whether it's in his executive director's report today, or at the November meeting, or even by letter, that we welcome him to also respond if he would like to. So I think that's important for everyone to know.
Might I have an opportunity to respond now?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Please do.
While I appreciate any criticism and constructive criticism, and I take
Yes,
this
sir.
all to heart, I think the forum that it was delivered in is not proper. I think if you want me to improve and for this position to improve, then you just made that much more difficult at this point. Dr. Hildreth mentioned the fact that regarding the time of giving notice to the board, I also need to have direction from the board on things to do. I did not have direction on what type of events would trigger extra board scrutiny or communication, such as an invitation from an elected official. When I received that invitation to attend the Metro Council orientation, the letter indicated that it was a 10-minute brief 10-minute meeting to describe our department and the issues facing the department. It came from the vice mayor. I didn't consider it at that time to be one of the triggering topics that I should contact the board about, because I hadn't been given that direction. But now that I have, I know that. So I just want to bring that to the board's attention as well. But as I said, I will address those issues at another forum, because I don't think this is the right forum to bring this up. But as I said, I appreciate the criticism, constructive criticism. I'll take it at that, and we'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Whedon. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
I wanted to know how the board is feeling, one, and then two, how can we carefully navigate morale? Because it feels like the morale may be low, or this may be hitting at the morale. I know the constant emails from Chief Anderson, the constant exploratory things that the FOP is doing is lowering me. So I'm just curious about, since we can't check in with each other, I'm just curious about how morale is amongst the board members. I'm pretty sure you got it from the staff, but I'm just curious on just that right there.
Ms. Ross?
My morale is not low at all. I appreciate the chief sending the responses that he has sent. We all have to work together. Even the communications department has sent responses, and I think FOP. So it's in terms of partnering and working together, and everybody has a say in how we are working to make this board more effective, not just the board, but the staff more effective.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Anyone else?
Well,
Dr. Lewis?
I guess since we have to say it explicitly, I think that turning down an invitation to speak with the FOP, even though they already had the opportunity, was not a goodwill gesture. And whoever made that decision, I would disagree with that strongly.
What, can you say one more time? I'm sorry, I missed it.
The decision to refuse to meet with the FOP over the MOU.
So I'll circle back. Mr. Whedon reached out to me about that. The FOP was extended more than one invitation to participate in the MOU. They declined. They continue to decline. In fact, they never even wanted to respond. I told Mr. Whedon that we set a dangerous precedent when we show favoritism to any organization that decides they want to play by their own rules. That was a decision that I, as chair, made. And I apologize I didn't include that in my remarks because we didn't have an opportunity to come back here. If there's a vote or a decision that we want to, is a motion on the floor that we want to do something different, I welcome it and I'll lead us to that vote. But we have noticed nothing but bully tactics by the FOP, right? Asking for everything close to what I want on my lunch, deli meat, right? They want all the information, but they never want to participate the way every other organization that has been invited to participate in this MOU has participated. And that was odd to me. It was odd of the timing, and I told Mr. Whedon, in fact, you can post the email I sent you. It said, absolutely not. I asked you first, right? I said, were they not invited to participate? You emailed me back and said, yes, Chair Davis, they were. They did not respond and did not want to participate. I said, well, then no. We're not going to reopen it. When now we have moved forward to what we said was the third phase, where we sit down with the chief and finalize things. So that, just for clear and transparency here, that's how we got to that space. But
Okay, did I disagree with you making that decision?
That's all right. I understand, Dr. Lewis, absolutely. And like I said, if there's a
To be
vote,
sure, I mean that I was following the direction of my board chair.
yeah, and that's no one's faulting you there. That has nothing to do with this letter is talking about. No, Ms. Ross.
Well, I feel that there's so much stuff going on that the board does not know between you and Mr. Whedon. Maybe that may have been some information that you should have shared instead of popping up in information we got in the last 2 or 3 days from the chief that there was not a cooperation with the FOP. So I think it's some things going on behind the scene that the board should be more aware of.
Right, I appreciate your statement, Ms. Ross. There's not a ton of things going on behind the scenes. I can promise you that. That was a decision I got by email. And usually, you see, I try to include everything in my chair remarks. You have my apologies on that, right? Look, here, and let's just be very clear about the format that we are talking about. Mr. Whedon talked about proper form. There is no other forum for this board to make decisions, to come together. There is no sidebar conversations that can take place between me and Mr. Campbell-Gooch to make a decision. We talk about everything right here with that camera on green. And yes, that makes things sticky, but yes, it informs people so that they can know exactly what's going on. And if that has to make me uncomfortable, then fine, I'm good with it. Because at least someone at home can know exactly what everyone else knows, right? And we knew what we were signing up for. You know, Mr. Whedon, I'll be very frank with you, there was no other space where I could share this with the board and get their feedback, and then at the same time be in accordance with the laws that were explained to us when we came on the board. And so none of this is about any level of embarrassment. It truly is the only thing that we're able to operate under, which is just, I don't know. I mean, that's what we've been counseled with.
But you've been mentioning that you and Mr. Whedon have been passing back and forth several emails on different topics. Am I not correct?
Right. The emails that we've been talking about is him trying to get the minutes to the executive director report that I sent back and forth. The board doesn't need to be a part of those emails back and forth. No.
Okay.
That's literally him sending me something back, and it had a ton of errors, and I said, no, this cannot go forward, and it will not be sent to the board. The agenda was ready for you all days before. I pinged him and said, where is the ED report? Along these lines, because I've been agonizing around whether or not I needed to compose this letter, I've been trying my very best to work with Mr. Whedon and say, hey, he can tell you around reoccurring meetings, around making sure that I told him to look at his org chart and see if the duties were aligned so that he was getting the most out of his staff, and if he needed to restructure things, right? And if we need to bring in a third party to do that, trust me, it would free up a ton of my time, because this has really, I'll be very frank with you all, I drew the 1 year straw poll, and I think the Lord wanted me to, because this has been beautifully exhausting. Like, it's important because it's good service, but it has been tiring to try to pull all of this together and also make sure there's nothing but notes here to make sure I inform and go back. But I'll do a better job, because on this right here, there was nothing hidden. It was just a matter of me telling him, I don't know how we would set a precedent for another organization, whether they're FOP or not. Mr. Campbell-Gooch, Dr. Lewis. Excuse me, Dr. Hildreth, Dr. Lewis.
You mentioned that asked if anyone had a motion, so I wanted to just allow time to see if someone did before I made my comment. Okay, so I wanted to say I do appreciate the information that we have been receiving through email, but I do not appreciate the tone, and I do not appreciate not coming before the board and being in front of the community and on camera. So when I'm mentioning that the morale is low, it seems like all of those conversations have been happening closed door and behind the scenes and through our email inboxes, instead of showing up and actually participating in the building of these structures. So that's what I just wanted to specify exactly what I was talking about when I talked about it's a structural failure.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. Dr. Hildreth?
Thank you.
No, come here.
So I'm responding to Mr. Campbell-Gooch's question, which gets to the heart of what I want to say directly to Mr. Whedon. I regret the fact that we had this conversation in this forum. I also did not know how to think through what a better way to do it is. Consider all the constraints that we have been under from the passage of Amendment 1 by our community on November 4th last all the way through. We have been on a very tight time frame to do everything. And sometimes it means that it seems like we're being rushed or making decisions in not the best way. And since part of the decision clock started at 11:30 last night, as we all had other things to do, I was, one, dreading the meeting, and two, not knowing how I was going to feel about responding. So there are two things, and I'm going to end on a process recommendation. Can we possibly use the executive committee structure more robustly? Because what I would like to suggest is always an employment matter with Mr. Whedon should first be handled in executive committee, because the executive committee is a public, open, and publicly noticed meeting. It's not recorded, but for those of you and for the listening public, you do know that you can go onto the Nashville website and set an alert. And every time we notice something, if you're subscribed to that, you'll find out about it. So that if there is an executive committee meeting scheduled you'll know about it. And if that's the place and that's a smaller forum, it's still public, but it's not on tape. And there can be some measure. I would have preferred that that would have happened in executive committee. However, I went against sort of what would have made me feel better, Mr. Campbell-Gooch, and I anticipate would have made you feel better, to stay with the responsibility that we have been trying as a group to keep faith with the entire public and the entire community from day one, which is we were going to be clear, transparent, open, and timely to the best of our ability. And this is one of those situations where it clashed, and I regret that that happened, and I hope that this never happens again.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Dr. Lewis, if you don't mind, we'll go to Ms. March.
Yep.
So I just kind of want to speak on what Dr. Lewis had kind of mentioned about the response to the request from the FOP to meet. And I also believe that it was not a good call. I wanted to just mention that when we initially invited community organizations to have some input, that particular meeting happened at the same time. There was another, there was a big city council meeting. And so we did not, I feel like we didn't get the participation that we hoped to receive because there was another big meeting going on. However, we did do some secondary requests to see if people wanted to send in emails about the MOU, about suggestions and changes about regarding the MOU. So I do want to acknowledge that. I want to also put out there that that MOU highly affects the police officers and the FOP who are identified as representatives for the police officers. And so I think that there has to be some allowances made. I think that we come into this asking for organizations to make some allowances for us as a new body here, and that I can speak for myself that I was hopeful that people would get in, certain entities would roll up their sleeves and do the hard work with us, not for us, but with us. But I expected some pushback and some opposition. I expected that. And so my morale is not low. However, I'm still hopeful that there will be a change, and that this pushback and these activities has no meaning other than to suck up time and to be an activity to show opposition. I'm hoping that as time goes on, that certain entities will cease to do that, and that they will roll up their sleeve and get into the ring, get into it with us, and help us make this be the best board that it could possibly be, the best, and that we can do the best work here, where everyone has a seat at the table.
Thank you, Ms. March. Dr. Lewis?
So I wanted to speak to what Dr. Hildreth had to say, and I want to disagree with you without being disagreeable. But I don't think the clock did start at 11:30 last night. It sounds to me as though Chair Davis has been trying to coach and counsel Mr. Whedon throughout this process and help him improve. And I do agree that we need to formalize a process, and that this public forum may not be the best.
I meant my clock started at 11:30.
Oh,
I
okay.
did not start thinking about this issue.
Right.
Nor what my response would be.
Okay.
Today at 4 o'clock on the record.
Okay.
I mean, maybe with 2 more hours, I might have had my very first comment be, could this be deferred to executive committee? That was the clock that I was referring to.
Okay.
And no, I am agreeing with you. The urgency was we know that it had been creeped, and we need to make sure that that's clear. So as Mr. Whedon says, there's clear direction. Maybe it is not obvious for the work that I have been engaged in this community and the way this community handles news and makes opinions. Any contact with an elected official, particularly the deputy mayor, the way that goes, is an immediate red flag to me. And so that then created a sense of urgency and response. I do understand how that could not be an immediate red flag to someone else. And that is where I think I am sorry that learning conversation happened in this forum. But what it really comes down to is I think we are all doing the best we can with the best of intentions towards the best outcome, and we will continue to get better.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis and Dr. Hilden. I want to be very clear. I'll be right back to Ms. Marsh. That I did consider convening an executive committee meeting for this purpose. However, I got to lean almost close to what Ms. Ross has mentioned here, right? I've got a feeling that if I put this letter in front of the executive committee and not allowed the other 7 members of this board to have an opportunity to weigh in and to view and have a voice here, that I would have received difficulty, right? And so I had to weigh in between the two and go, again, yeah, like you said, kind of rocking a hard place here of making a decision here. And so my hope is that we never have to return to this space. But I just want to be clear about my thinking about why I chose this road here versus the other option there as well. I wanted to make sure the full board had the opportunity. Ms. Marsh.
Just 2 things. I want to just point out that the difficulties it is to only have this space to deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way for us to check in with each other. There's no way to bounce ideas off each other other than in this space, and that is quite difficult. Especially, I know for myself, it is quite difficult to. I sometimes feel like I'm coming in blindly. Other than the emails that I receive, I don't know how everybody else is feeling about it, and a lot of times I am hesitant to speak because usually somebody else will voice my concern before I have opportunity to, which is the good thing about this board and having people who are who think similarly and think a lot alike. And my second question, and I hope this is appropriate, is for Mr. Wheaton. Is there anything that you need from the board in writing or anything that we can do? Because it sounds like there are some expectations that this board has that maybe you were not aware of what those expectations are. And if you need us to put some of that in writing or if that's appropriate to do so.
Well, that's exactly what's needed. I mean, we're sitting here at this board meeting talking about processes that have not been followed because there has never been any process. And the same is true for us as a staff. But to put something in writing and give me direction as to what you expect and a plan, a strategic plan of what you expect as a board, what you expect of me as a director, what you expect of staff, would be something that I can follow along with and reach those goals as quickly as I can. But not having that, not knowing what trigger points are most important to you as a board, then there's no way that I can anticipate what issues of major concern may come up. As I said, I had no idea about the interaction with the city council at their orientation would be of such great concern because I had never been advised that. Obviously, if I had, I would have made that call. So, yes, bottom line, yes, guidance would be appreciated. Written guidance would be appreciated. Outlines, strategic plans, the same as I've been giving instruction to do for the staff. I need that same instruction from you. And we talk about morale. I check in with my staff almost every other day about how they're doing because morale is definitely difficult to maintain. It's a difficult job that we have as a staff when we're trying to balance out the things that are going on with the board and the things that are going on with the police department and the issues that we have to address in the community as well. So we're doing the best we can. I think if you were to ask our staff how our morale is, we maintain the morale, but the hours are difficult. I have a staff that are civil servants, and there are consequences for working past hours. I'm asking them to do a lot of things past hours that I appreciate they do, but it's a very difficult position that we're in. We have the executive staff does a tremendous amount of work, well more than 60 hours a week. I do well more than 60 hours a week of work. We try to do our best. We make mistakes, yes. Could we use more staff to do some of the things, administrative things that you're asking for? Now, yes, but it's difficult to do when this is a new organization with no ground rules whatsoever to follow, either with the police department or any other type of ground rules, so it's that much more difficult. And as I said, any type of criticism I appreciate. I use it constructively. I simply think that this forum, as I said, was totally inappropriate to provide that criticism. And as I said before, you're asking me to improve my performance in this position, which has just become tenfold as difficult to do because of what is currently ordained. So how do I go back and negotiate with FOP? How do I go back and negotiate with the police department? How do we go back and negotiate with other organizations when I've been put in such a detrimental position? So that's what I have to say about that. And as I said, I appreciate the constructive criticism. I don't agree with all of it. Some of it I take responsibility for, but I will address it at another time.
Ms. Marsh, anything else? Mr. Whedon, I'm going to call on myself here. So I want to be clear, this letter has no reflection on the staff of MNCO. I've met with the staff myself. I've made it, I think, abundantly clear that I feel, acknowledge the zeal, the hours, not just the Tuesdays, mostly, quite frankly, from 6 to 9, we see them, yes, working effortlessly, but even beyond the scenes in the work that they've come up and helped us with when we have these every 2-week meetings. Because, quite frankly, and let's be clear, we had those meetings because we discovered something in the course of our meetings that was not brought out to the board when it should have been communicated. You, as the executive director, should have communicated that to the board, and you failed to do so. Because of that, the board ramped up our energy and our efforts to try to fix things. And yes, we understood that because of that, it created an additional weight. But in no means, in no way has this board ever convened because we just want to sit around and talk. We have come together because there was a goal in front of us, and we needed to execute that. Furthermore, I have met with you to try my very best to explain the importance of providing a structure and a foundation so that your staff is set up to succeed. I did not believe that it was necessary for me to enumerate for you the importance of having reoccurring meetings with your staff because of your executive level. But I sat with you and I made it very clear that I thought it would be appropriate for you to find time in your schedule to simply have nothing on your calendar other than time for you to prepare, to look across the space and find places where you might need help or could find time for improvement. I understand, we all do, that it is not easy to stand something up on its own by itself. That's why the board, both collectively and I individually, continue to extend ourselves and be very clear about the answer here that I'm going to provide you with about how you can go and negotiate, whether it's FOP, Chief Anderson, or any other entity. We hope you do so with zeal. Because in that letter, I make sure that I say at least 3 times, we have a full-fledged faith that the energy and efforts and purpose of not just the COB, but the staff will continue to move forward. And we name you explicitly as our executive director. I chose this road because I believe all of these things can be corrected. But I also believe that they are going to take you, yes, and you said at the end, taking ownership and then taking action. This is not supposed to be a very feel-good space. But please know I didn't arrive here because of my own concerns. The board itself is saying individually that they've been feeling this way, but we're not even able to talk about it. It's coming here to light today without me even being able to go to Dr. Lewis and saying, well, how do you feel? I've never talked to Dr. Lewis or Dr. Hildreth or Ms. Ross. I've simply gone on my own and felt the pressure point of this space and gone, as chair, it's my responsibility to do something. So please know, please, I think it's important to know that we have full faith that you will take this, and you say criticism, I really look at this as us having a belief that the person we hired can do better and will do. And that if we need to activate ourselves in a different way, we are here to do so. It is important to me that you know we want you at that table across from Chief Anderson, and we believe you will stand up strongly and proudly and maybe even more erect than you have before and say, no, we will do this differently, Chief Anderson. And if that's the fight, the air we put between your wings, I'm happy we had to do it tonight, whether I feel good about it or not. And I agonize over coming here today as well. But I know it's important. This is important to me. This is important to everybody sitting here. I will tell you I'm not faultless. I'm sure as your chair I've made mistakes, but I can promise you everything I've done up until this moment here has been because I want this to succeed. And if I only got a few months left, who knows what happens next in this space, but I'm going to set this board up to succeed before I get out of this chair. That's it.
Well, I agree with that. I intend to make sure this organization succeeds as well. I've hired the best possible staff that could have been hired. They're all more than able to do this job as I am. And we will continue to do the work that's necessary to improve the relationship between the police and the community here in Nashville. And I will do that with zeal as long as I'm here. And I intend to make improvements not only in myself, but in the organization as quickly as possible and as much as possible. So I look forward to continuing the work.
Thank you, Mr. Whedon. Any additional comments or statements by the board? Mr. Martinez?
I just want to thank you, Chair Davis, for all the work that you've done. I know that this isn't a decision that you came to lightly, and that you thought through all the political implications of bringing it to this public forum. And I know you've thought through every single situation, so thank you, and I know what it took for you to do it like this. I wanted to also address Jamel's question about morale. I think every time the chief emails us the way he does, it motivates me even more to do the work that we do, because I know that at the end of the day, the majority of Nashvillians voted to create this body, and that the chief and the FOP can only hold a grudge against the will of Nashvillians for so long, and that we're going to win at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. We have next on our agenda the COB MMPD MOU October 10th meeting. We've all received the emails, both the email that initially came out following that email, as well as the correspondence that took place after that as well. In fact, we can roll that into Mr. Whedon, if you want to walk through any highlights that need to be shared out in next steps and go straight into your executive director report, that's fine. But since this is in that order, let's begin with the COB MMPD, the MOU meeting, rather. Apologies.
The meeting was held on October 2nd and attended by myself, Assistant Director Fisher, and
excuse me, October 2nd?
10th.
10th.
10th, I'm sorry, October 10th.
10th.
And also Chief Turner was there. The meeting, basically the chief, we presented him with the MOU, and his first comment was that he would consider that MOU not to be more, as I would term it, a legal document of an MOU, but he would consider that to be policy recommendations rather than an MOU. And he indicated that he had read the MOU, considered them to be policy recommendations, and had indicated that there were over 90 of those policy recommendations or items that were in the MOU for change that he would consider policy recommendations, and that it would take, he would consider those recommendations individually, and it would take him time, he needed some time to respond to them. So, that caught me as I completely didn't know where that came from or how he could come to that decision, but that's what he did. Indicated that he wanted to get some input from the FOP in regards to the document, and also from the I think the patrol division. At that point, the conversation, as far as I was concerned about the MOU, was ended, and I had no intention of continuing the conversation with the chief about the MOU. But this chief at that point shifted directions in the conversation and started going over issues that were the issues that I documented that were more in the previous document that he had sent us, which was the directive back in September that he had issued out to his department in regards to how they cooperated with us as a department. And one of the main issues that he was wanted to point out was that he had made some sort of incorrect judgment as to the access that our organization would have at the crime scene, because there may be situations in which a crime scene required a search warrant before individuals could enter that crime scene, and that because we weren't part of the police department, we wouldn't have access to the crime scene. So in that regard, it was my feeling that we were being restricted in what was already given to us or provided to us through his earlier directive, and that was one point that he was made to stress to us. He also talked about training, and that the department couldn't create any new trainings for us. We could only go to the trainings that were already in existence. And in regards to the notification issue, the chief indicated that he would remain silent for any negotiations that we were having with the MOU in that regard. So that, in essence, was what the nature of the meeting was on the 10th with the police department.
Thank you, Mr. Whedon. Any questions from the board? I'll start with just next steps. If you could share with us what, if any, are the next steps you have in mind here for this meeting, or for the MOU?
Well, at this point, hopefully we can have a conversation with the mayor, and he can assist us in helping the chiefs realize that this MOU is a legitimate document that was put painstakingly together by this board with input from the community, and that it is a document that we fully intend to have both organizations be a part of once the agreement is made between both organizations. But the opportunity for making policy recommendations, as he indicated in that meeting, I think we tried that earlier in a meeting that we had with the chief way back in May and also in August. So I think he was well aware that this MOU was being established long ago, and that if there was some sincere input in this process, that if that was a feeling of the department that this was not going to be a MOU but rather policy recommendations, we could have been called to the table sooner and said, well, I think that we can accomplish this through this route rather than through an MOU, but that wasn't done. So.
Okay, so you said hopefully you'll meet with the mayor, but
We will meet with the mayor. The mayor has indicated that he's going to provide us with a liaison. We're going to schedule regularly meetings with the mayor. We actually have a meeting, hopefully coming up in the next week or two. Okay. Mr. Boneman from the mayor's office has indicated that he's trying to coordinate a meeting, and he hasn't provided me with that date yet. So we will meet with the mayor, and this will be a topic of discussion.
Okay, I'll yield to my colleagues here, Mr. Martinez and Ms. Ross.
I want to go to the
Chief.
Oh, Chief Turner, I'm sorry, the mic is hiding.
That's okay.
So do you mind if I go to Chief Turner
no,
first?
go ahead.
Chief Turner.
Now, I just wanted to say in reference to the MOU, there are some items in the MOU that I think we're going to have to go back and revisit. There are items in here that are very broad. They need to be more specific, especially as it relates to the request for records and information. Mm-hmm. As I sat through that meeting on October 10th, the chief did agree to some of the things that were requested in MOU. But once again, I think there are items in MOU that we need to revisit and actually condense some of it down to where there's a better understanding of what information Mr. Wheaton's staff will need as it relates to crime scene access and et cetera. So, with that said, I think that we're going to have to be more open in communicating with the police department. It seems to be right now that there's a back and forth, and it's going to be important that the information that's relayed by Mr. Wheaton is concise and accurate. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Chief Turner. I believe I called Mr. Martinez.
I want to go to the point that the chief makes that the charter authorizes the COB to make policy recommendations so that it then interprets our MOU as 90 or 100 separate policy recommendations. He's interpreting the charter to be restrictive of our abilities when the charter isn't restrictive of our abilities or their abilities to come to the table and negotiate. Mm-hmm. Is there any way you can push back and say, think outside the charter. The charter doesn't say, the charter is not limiting us to only make policy recommendations, mm-hmm. right?
Absolutely. I think that was, I think the interpretation of that charter amendment by the chief was totally incorrect in that regard.
So is that, and let me just, because next is Ms. Ross here, but you've penned a response to this, or a separate response to the chief. Am I correct about that?
Yes, I penned a response to the chief. Yes.
Okay. Has that gone out?
Yes, I sent it to the chief. I think I posted it online today as well.
And that's the email. Okay.
Yeah.
But in that, do we make the point that Mr. Martinez is saying here?
I didn't make the point that
Okay.
Mr. Martinez made, but
Okay.
I will stress that to the chief.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to be clear. Ms. Ross.
So is there any documentation that needs to come back to the Rules and Policy Committee in reference to concerns that you had with the chief there?
I don't think there's anything that needs to go back to the Rules and Bylaws and Rules Committee. I think what I'd like to see the chief's response, if he's going to indicate that he's going to provide responses to these policy recommendations. I think what we need to do is see what these response is and consider that a counter offer to our MOU and proceed to that point in that fashion.
Okay, and also what about some of his concerns in terms of investigators? Have we responded to any of this?
No, he didn't respond to
This is
any
the
of those
second time
questions.
he's asked, at least.
Yes,
Right.
ask all those questions, yes. No.
Will there be a response?
We can't, yes, I can respond to him, yes.
Mr. Kemp Gooch. I got a list here.
I appreciate it. So I have just like a couple, just like very basic questions, and anyone can answer. I'm just unclear. Does MNPD have their own like legal department?
Mm-hmm.
They do, correct. And so it seems like what just needs to happen to expedite the process is that somebody from MNPD legal would be a part of this process instead of the chief, instead of constantly having to go back and forth with the chief. I know that probably isn't available to us, but I wanted to just put that on the record, that it seems like, because I've built MOUs before, and there's always legal departments from both sides when constructing the just memorandum of understanding or just a general contract. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion that maybe we can get the chief to let us know who from the legal department we can contact and be involved in the constructing of the MOU.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell Gooch. I think it's a great suggestion. Chief Turner, and then we'll come to Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, just for clarification, I don't know if you said that the police department has its own legal department.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that they have their own legal department. They do have a legal representative from Metro Legal
Gotcha.
that's assigned to the police department.
Okay.
So that would be the person that would be representing the police department in any legal issues.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief Turner. Dr. Lewis?
That person.
I think that's a great idea, Mr. Campbell Gooch, to get their legal involved.
Yeah, please.
And stop all of this back and forth and
Get them out the
sniping.
way.
I think that we have danced the pushback dance, and the chief is not going to dance that with us. And instead, what we're going to need to do is try to catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. We're going to have to do the things that he asked us to do. And then when he won't comply with them, then we will have a leg to stand on.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, and I think Ms. Ross can speak to it, but didn't he request an MOU? If I remember, didn't he request us put something down on paper around what our procedures are?
He didn't specifically request the MOU. He requested that something be in writing.
Okay, and then we decided that the MOU would be the best way to go about it.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to set the timeline, because although we can be like, I guess we can catch more flies with honey. I mean, but what happens when those things then turn into another delay tactic where we're just doing everything that's being asked of us
Then we
and
say
not
we've
getting
done
any
everything that's
results?
been asked. Then we have a leg to stand on. We say, we have done everything that you have asked us to do.
I mean, I've also played that game before, and it doesn't really seem to get us anywhere.
I agree with Jamel.
Just one moment. I think it's Ms. Marsh.
It's Ms.
and then
Marsh,
we'll come
yeah.
right back. Sure.
No matter what form we presented in MOU, contract, policy advisory report, he's going to push back on it somehow.
Ms. Marsh?
And so, I read his email, and I understand where he talks about the MOU, where it states the obligations of each party, and I agree with that. You got to be at the table for us to know what we need to put in the MOU, and that has been my concern. Is that when we don't send out invitations because it looks nice. We need people to weigh in, and we need particularly people that are impacted most by this board, which is a lot of people, right? As a community, but it's also the police department. It's also FOP, and this is the only. And I keep saying this is the only forum that we have. And so when we ask, when we say, we have an MOU that we're working on. Will you come to this meeting? If you can't come, can you send someone? And I think it's interesting that the DA's office was willing to assign us a liaison, and they have no mention in the MOU, and that we can't get that from the police department, which would be so beneficial if we can get that. And once again, I offer this idea of everybody rolling up their sleeve. And I say everyone, I want to be real clear that it's the COB, that it's the police department, that it's the FOP, that it's the community. We roll up the sleeves and we do the hard work. And it just don't fall on this board to do the work only. And we can't begin to, our MOU is very, it is very heavily stated or what we are requesting of MNPD. Because we don't know what MNPD is requesting of us. At least I don't know. And so Dr. Lewis mentioned about doing some of the things that he has requested, the police department has requested. I don't know what those things are. And I got the email. I know, the request about the employment, personnel history, and that is actually the first request came from the FOP, and this is the first request from the police department. And I think that some of that can definitely be accomplished by going through human resources and getting some of that information. But I do agree that and I stated before is that if the police department or if the FOP needs something from us, that we at least try to comply. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Marsh. Ms. Ross, are you raising your hand? Oh, Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you. So I'm listening, and I'm wondering if this is a time for us to come up with one of our patented process intervention decisions. Can we decide I'm wondering what it would look like to create a negotiation team, or 2 negotiation teams. 3 members from COB, and I do mean COB, so that these sessions are going to be noticed, all right? 3 members from COB, 3 members from, I'm going to say, the mayor's side, so they can decide whether that's somebody from the mayor's office, the police department specifically, and one of those 3 would need to be a representative from the FOP. So 3 and 3, and a legal representative from each side. So the negotiation table is 8 individuals. And I would like to suggest that those 8 individuals set their work schedule and and meet as often as they need to do what happens in good negotiation theory and praxis, which is form some sense of relationship as working as a team, form some relationship around understanding the data and the actual questions that are in play, do the investigation around the logistics. That level of notice won't work. What do we need to do? Let's send that assignment and come back. But really send them to do the hard work and then come back with recommendations to their authorized deciders. So the COB team would be coming back to COB General, and the other side would be the other. And I'm being a little squishy about the executive branch of government side, because I think we all do understand and agree that the police department is an entity that works under the direction of the mayor, right? So I kind of want to see what that would look like. I don't want to overstep. If the mayor wants to say, I want somebody from inside of my office as one, and then chief, you name somebody else, and the FOP is a 3rd, plus their lawyer, and that's their team. It may make sense for our team to have one of the mayoral appointees, clearly one of our law enforcement, and I really just want to go ahead and name you, Member Marsh, because of your alternative identity as a conflict management and mediation professional by virtue of your day job and also your past experiences. I think those are important things to name. They've been named on the record according to your selection, and this is one of those times when we look at, like Team Marvel in the Avengers, what are the superpowers present? They can get the hard work done. You have that dual lens. You know what it looks like from law enforcement, and then you also have the process skills to lead the team through negotiation. That's going to be my recommendation. And maybe we can chew on that for a moment to see whether it ripens into a motion and go forward.
Where does our staff come in? Where would the executive director
What was the question?
I was asking where would
staff?
where would our staff?
I almost wanted to say that there could be as many, it's not a closed meeting at this
Right.
time.
Right.
So I would want to say that staff comes, I mean, Executive Director Whedon should be de facto one of the members, but I was trying not to cut down. So
Okay.
I guess, okay, let me backward engineer that. We need our Executive Director.
Right.
I think you need Ms. Marsh, Member Marsh, because she's law enforcement and a negotiator. And I do think because of the structure of the board, one of the 2 mayoral appointees, whether it's one of, we're speaking structurally here, this is not about person, because remember, I drew the short straw, so I may be out. We hear a rumor that somebody else may no longer be available. But the mayor will have 2, right? So I'm speaking structurally, and we can implement practically.
Yeah, right.
But the negotiation team, because I'm thinking that this is not going to be the only time when they're going to be negotiated work between the board and going forward. So whenever that happens, because of the structure of the police department works at the direction of the executive branch of government, the mayor, then that means that one of the board members probably should be one of the executive branch's representatives. Someone from law enforcement who's one of our board member. Always have ex officio the executive director, and maybe that's the 3. So I don't.
Okay. I was thinking the same thing. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure our ED was
You're gonna make
included.
me think out loud on the record what you're going to be
I'm
green
sure I
light as
did. I
usual.
just want to make
Yeah.
sure our ED was a part of the count.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, you said you wanted to chew on it, but are there ideas, feelings, dissenting opinions on that? Or others agree, rather, that that might be a good way to move forward? I mean, that is, to this idea, though, you know, we could gather our 4 and be ready to go. But on the other side, we're hoping and assuming that they would also come to the table, right, and be willing to extend their
I
support.
would ask that whoever authors the motion would ask that the executive branch of government respond within 14 days of passage of the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dr. Hildreth. Is there a motion, or do we want to think about it and come back? It's okay if we don't want to act on it, or if we'd like to return. I just want to offer space here. If there is thoughts here. Mr. Campbell.
So I have a couple questions, just so I can make sure I'm clear on what the negotiating structure would be, Phyllis, Professor. So I'm gonna ask you to think out loud again. So, was it 3 or 4 from the Community Oversight Board? That's my first one. You named
So
3.
I actually went for, that was,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a manageable team to actually sit out and thrash things out. So I'm thinking 3 of 3, and I'm not counting the lawyers, right?
Gotcha.
So there's 8 people around the table.
Gotcha.
So I'm trying to be intentional within that 8. 2 are chewed up by the attorney. And then for the COB, Ms. Marsh, and we actually are fortunate we get 2 for her, right? Because she has the law enforcement chops, and she also has the professional negotiation skills. So that is 1. Number 2, structurally, I believe needs to be one of the mayoral appointees to this board. It's 2.
Okay. Okay, I got
And
you.
then that would leave, then, so if we're keeping the table at 8 total, then the 3rd is going to be the executive director. So it's actually 2 board members and executive director. These will always need to be publicly noticed meetings, and that's fine. You know, you could actually issue, if this team needs to meet weekly, it should issue its notice for the next meeting when they walk out the door from what they're doing, just to keep the work going and to make sure that our public has the ability to attend.
And then ideally, who would be on the opposite side of the table?
I would like to
Ideally.
suggest ideally that the mayor's office liaison.
Okay.
And a member of the FOP.
Okay.
So that really leaves the police department with fielding 1 individual.
Gotcha.
And the appointed metro attorney that represents each entity sitting at the table. So that's the 4. 3 and 3 negotiators, 2 legal clarifiers, 8 individuals should be manageable for productive clarifying conversation, and a portion of assignments between meetings to come back and actually get yes or no information on outstanding issues. That's the top of the dome version.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Mr. Campbell-Gooch.
No, I agree. I like it. I like it. I am now we're going off top of the dome. So is there a piece where I see like just one problem, or just like one issue, or opportunity of growth? There's no community member.
Yeah, so.
But I know I don't.
Here's my thinking out loud. This team is a technical team,
Gotcha.
okay?
Gotcha.
And it is a publicly noticed meeting.
So anyone can come.
So everybody can respond to the notice and be present,
Gotcha.
right? And figure out a way to get a message into the team between meetings. But really, if you want to make sure that the negotiation is going to be effective, you can't have, because you've got 20 people weighing in,
It's too
now
much.
it's a consensus thing, and we know that that's a very different and important decision-making model, but it's very different. We're down to good old-fashioned
Negotiation.
distributive, integrated negotiation, and that needs to be a tight, focused, charged, and competent team. meaning has the skill sets and the knowledge base to accomplish the time at hand, the task at hand, in an effective and time-bound manner.
I just want to let the record show that I strongly agree with Phyllis Hildreth's recommendation.
You can go
Make a
further than that
motion.
and make a motion.
I don't know how to word the motion, but yeah.
Negotiation task force.
No, thank you. Thank you. I would like to make a motion that the negotiation task force suggested by Professor Hildreth be made and constructed with the 14-day time limit that she mentioned.
It has to be agreed upon from the other departments too.
Right.
Agreed from by the other departments. Thank you, Mr. Campbell Gooch. In 1 second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Open discussion here, focused discussion here. I'm going to just call myself and be clear. Dr. Hildreth, I think you said that, you know, I want Mr. Campbell Gooch to make sure here that the person that makes the motion for the 14-day window, right? That we want to engage.
That part of our motion is we're asking the executive branch of government to respond by identifying and authorizing an equivalent negotiation team to consist of a mayoral liaison, a member of the FOP, and a member of the police department.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. I just want to be clear here. Any additional focused discussion here? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much.
One abstention
One
in light of
abstention.
my possible future role and the legal's involvement in this motion. I think it appropriate for me to abstain.
I had no idea you had Mr. Cooper. Great. No, it makes perfect sense. We'll note one abstention here by Mr. Cooper here. Thank you very much. Motion carries. So to move this along, thank you. If Dr. Hildreth, if we could, I could ask you
Tag on
to,
it.
tag your it there, to ensure that you could work alongside Mr. Whedon and Ms. Fitchard here to ensure we communicate over to the proper parties the decisions been made here. Yeah.
May I ask,
Dr. Hildreth.
will Member Marsh volunteer to be on this? She was not named in the motion, just in the discussion.
Sure, I volunteer.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Marsh.
That's tribute.
Tribute. Thank you.
So we have identified that the COE team is Hildreth as the mayor's appointee, Member Marsh, and Executive Director Wheeler.
Sounds like a great team. Thank you very much. Before we
Beautiful.
we move, we only have a few things left on our agenda here. The policy review request there that we have, and I'm coming right to our executive director report after this, that is here. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's seen the detailed request that's in front of us for our review, and we'll certainly come back to that. I think it's a 2-pager, I think, in front of us. And we'll come back to that. I just want to note here on the invited guest speakers, so Mayor Cooper, we extend an invitation. We have a copy of it. There we received an email response that from a scheduler stating that he was unable to attend, but that their designee, Mrs. Warrington, Director of State Government Relations and Council Liaison, will be attending on his behalf. I believe also, yes ma'am, and thank you for hanging out the table with us here. We wanted to extend space and time here. Should you have anything you would like to share, but certainly, you know, I think that was what Mr. Wheaton might have emailed to share as well. Space. Ms. Warrington, if you'd like to, you certainly are welcome to. We can slide one of the mics over to you, or you can join us here next to Mr. Cooper here. We just want to make sure it's able to be caught up on the mics there.
Sure, no, this was just a listening opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warrington. So you're welcome. We welcome the mayor, please, as well. I mean, you've been able to hear everything we've shared here. We say again, we're happy to extend the time, change the venue as well. We were very fortunate, I believe, to have previous Mayor Mayor Briley welcome us to the Metro Courthouse and simply just opening remarks of saying, and I believe that might have even been our first meeting, maybe, right, of just setting the tone and ensuring that we were all working together, and we would love to hear that same message from Mayor Cooper as well. Thank you very much for being here with us. Extend the invitation also to Chief Anderson. You'll see, we've gone through this email as well. It doesn't note the invitation that we received, but I hope and have very strong high hopes rather, that our new approach here with the negotiation task force is successful in that space, and Chief Anderson will be invited and continue to be invited as well. And I appreciate what Ms. Marsh spoke about, the importance of having him participate, and others as well at the table. We'll come back to the other two there, and I'd like to pause for our Executive Director to offer his report here. So we'll be going here to his memo.
I'll just go through the report quickly. I've previously handed it out. Talked about the engagements that we did this past couple of weeks. Spoke earlier about the Metro Council orientation. We also attended the IMF luncheon on the 9th of October. Gave a presentation about COB and what COB does and what civilian oversight is in that presentation. Assistant Director Fitchard and I attended the District Attorney's body-worn camera news briefing on the 14th of October. On the 15th of October, Assistant Director Fitchard and I attended the Metro Minority Caucus, Council Caucus, with Chair Hurt presiding. One of the things that was important there was that we were able to give another presentation, and also the Minority Council indicated that they were strongly in favor of the organization and wanted to work with us in partnership and make us one of the priorities for that caucus. So we greatly appreciate that. In addition, on the 16th of October, I attended a taping of the Jesse Goldberg show that is aired at some later date. I don't know the exact date that that's going to air. So we did quite a bit of outreach in the past couple of weeks. The next section of my report deals with operations. You can see the case activity report. It's been previously submitted to you, and you can see the number of cases that we've opened during the past 6 months and those remaining open at this time. Case summary report was also submitted as part of the documentation. I'm sure you've reviewed that earlier, so I won't go into that. One item of importance that we recently obtained as part of our operations is ArcGIS software for our research analysts so that they can perform statistical mapping scenarios with their research. So that is a good piece of software to have for our research analysts. Next item in my report deals with the stakeholders. We spoke earlier about our meeting with Mayor Cooper on the 8th of October. To reiterate, the next item was talking about the Metro Police Department. We've already discussed that as well. Fraternal Order of Police, that was discussed as well, so I won't go into that either. And lastly, the District Attorney's Office. We had our first meeting with the District Attorney's Office on the 1st of October with District Attorney Liaison, and that was successful. And we're going to continue to have meetings with the District Attorney Liaison monthly. The next one will be sometime in November.
Mr. Whedon, could you, thank you for noting that you had the meeting, but could you go into a bit more detail about how that meeting was successful, what the type of topics were on the agenda?
The District Attorney's, I was not at the District Attorney meeting. Ms. Fitcher was there. She can discuss that better. Okay. I was out of town, but we reached some agreement on how records would be exchanged and the type of records. Ms. Fitcher can describe that more.
Okay. Ms. Fitcher, if you wouldn't mind. I'd love to hear.
So Mr. Pinkley and I met with Jenny Charles in General Funk, and they asked us what it was that we needed from them. We discussed the kind of records that we could get. Of course, there's some issues as it pertains to records on open cases that are in the criminal prosecution process, so we won't be able to get, all the records, but they said that once the records have been sent to the clerk's office, that they would be able to possibly give us those records because they become public records at that point. I told them that there were some things that we had pending, and they were able to give us some records on those that were helpful to us. So that was good. We're going to meet with them once a month. She also gave us an email address to reach out to someone else, like if she's not available, to be able to get records if we need them, or to ask questions as it pertains to cases and see what is available to us. Okay. So that was helpful as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Mr. Whedon, in the report, just for future notice here, if it's a matter of, because this is your report, when you note that you conducted the meeting, if by chance you were not present or someone attended in your absence, simply note that so that we don't make the natural assumption that you were present, right? Because naturally that's the reason why I'm asking you the details of the meeting, right? And it would be helpful to know. Any questions or thoughts related to the report here, Mr. Martinez? Yeah, we can certainly talk about the complaints.
I'm seeing here some records are being denied because of a statute relating to juveniles.
Which one?
Tell me the case number, please.
2019-002P and 2019-026C.
The last one.
Okay, correct. On 2019-002P, we requested records as it pertained to something that we saw a video on the internet, and we wanted to investigate that case to see if the use of force was used and if it was a policy violation, because it was at a local high school. We requested the records for the adult that was involved, but they denied the records that we requested because they said that the information contained juvenile information. So then I asked the investigator to request the records again, but redact any information that pertained to the juvenile, and they still denied those records. We also asked for the use of force report that was that should have been created with this particular case, and that was denied as well. On 2019-026C, this is a case that came in as a harassment case. It involved an adult that it's her house, it's her complaint, but it involved her grandchild who lives at that address, and because of that, they would not give us the records.
So we cannot investigate any case relating to juveniles.
We should be able to.
I don't think that that's the issue. I think that we'll have a hard time getting the records that pertain to a juvenile.
So it's another thing that we're going to have to negotiate in the MO.
I believe so.
I don't think it'll be difficult. We can investigate cases involving juveniles, but as Assistant Director Fisher said, it's going to be difficult because we're restricted with the records that you can receive.
The laws that protect the juvenile records is going to be difficult for us to get.
Ms. Ross?
Yeah.
No?
No.
Mr. Cameron-Gooch?
Now I just have a structural question. Like, if I have a student that needs to file a complaint, what should I tell them to do?
If you have what?
A student who needs to file, a juvenile who needs to file a complaint.
The juvenile can file a complaint with our office. We can investigate fully. There's things we can do outside of receiving official police reports. I mean, there's witnesses, video, we can locate that. So there's numerous things that we can do in an effort to help that person. So he should continue to make a report to the organization.
And I think also that if it pertains to a juvenile and their parents are with them, they can also ask for the records themselves. And then, they could ask for their own records.
Okay.
And then they could give those.
So the parent would need to participate as well.
I think if it pertains to us getting records, if it happens on a school and you want those records, I think that a parent could ask for those records.
Okay.
Gotcha, Mr. Cameron-Gooch. Let me just one more question here, so I'm clear. You said that you instructed your staff to request that it redact any information regarding the juvenile, and it was subsequently denied again, right? It was denied.
That's
the second
correct.
time
I
around.
think what's happening here is the Metropolitan Police Department Records has a staff. I don't think that the staff that they have in the records department is real clear on what that actually looks like or means. And so it's just that if something pertains to a juvenile, they have been instructed possibly to just redact that information and not look at the case-by-case information. And that's something that we need to work through with them.
Okay.
So when the because I think Mr. Campbell-Gooch or Mr. Martinez, I think it was Mr. Martinez saying this is something we need to add in and add to it. So I would assume that when the new committee, the task force is coming together, they are coming together to then determine kind of the agenda of what we want to talk about today. You can't, swallow the elephant whole. So I'm assuming this is the space where because of what you're experiencing, we're going to go back and say, hey, and this is also something that's not present in the MOU that we need to go back and
Yeah, and I think that can be, I think that maybe we need to talk to someone in juvenile court about that as well. And then I don't know, exactly what the law says as it pertains to juvenile and the protection of those records.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. That'd be helpful. Mr. Pinckney, is that something that you could look into for us and perhaps with?
I can, before we go there, there are going to be some issues if it's a school incident. Like if there's a camera in the school, those are protected under a federal statute where we'd have a hard time going around.
Yeah.
But if it's just a juvenile, I agree with Ms. Fisher. We can get with someone from juvenile court and maybe work out what the regulations are surrounding that.
Okay, thank you so much. Very helpful.
Yep.
Any additional questions, either related to the report here or also to the records status that we have in front of us here? Any member of the board? Okay. Not. Thank you very much, Mr. Whedon. I appreciate it. We'll move down to the police review request. Yes, Mr. Cooper.
If I could interrupt, I'd like to ask a technical question going back to the motion on the negotiation task force.
Yes, sir.
Part of that motion was requesting a response from the mayor's office within 14 days, but it doesn't appear clear when that 14 days starts to run. The board may want to consider perhaps putting this motion into writing, into a written communication to deliver to the mayor's office, and as part of that written communication, request a response within 14 days of receiving that communication, so that there's a clear expectation that, for example, it didn't start running when we adjourn this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I think it's a wonderful idea, and I appreciate Mr. Campbell-Gooch asking us to kind of go through and enumerate our thoughts, and Dr. Hildreth pulling out the crayons and coloring it in front of us too, right? So, Mr. Whedon, and I did ask if Dr. Hildreth if you'd be comfortable working closely with Mr. Whedon, and then if you could work on composing such a letter, I think that would be very helpful. So that, like, to Mr. Cooper's point, it is very clear. Dr. Hildreth.
If I may say, I have time challenges from other duties up to and through the end of close of business on Saturday, where this board will be in police training all day long.
Yeah.
So I would not have the ability to turn attention to that until Monday. If that's too long, then I'm going to ask maybe the chair or somebody else could do that letter so it can go out within the next.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I can say I'm on a bit of a crunch myself, but I'll take some time.
Okay.
I won't send any
We'll
11:30
each
email.
other.
Yep, I'll 11:30 email you, and we'll get it done. We'll get it done. That way, at least we have a draft and we can send something quickly to the mayor's office.
And we can do that through the executive director.
Yep.
So that we're not.
Yep, sending it by way of him and getting the draft finalized.
Also, just since this topic got reopened, sitting here thinking, with the new issue that just came up in juvenile, does that need to be on the table? I would like to recommend, as a way that we work together, that Mr. Whedon, as the member of our triumvirate, will be the one to let the team know what the negotiating priorities are. And I am assuming that will be worked out between Mr. Whedon and the chair. So then rather than us having impermissible check-ins with each other, it will be very clear that the work of the negotiating team on behalf of this body is directed by the chair through Mr. Whedon, and Mr. Whedon will inform the negotiating team of our work task when we work.
Makes perfect sense. Mr. Whedon, is that clear with you?
Yes.
It works?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the use of force. Mr. Whedon, can you, we have it in front of us here, I'm finding it. Move us through this, and then we will take a vote on both of them expeditiously here.
So use of force report proposal that's put forth by the research analysts to establish a yearly use of force report to resolve two primary purposes. First, assist with the use of force by MNPD and how frequently they use the use of force. Secondly, to review the policies and training curriculums of use of force and de-escalation and compare the policy and training practices established by the department. Dr. Valier has prepared this report, and Dr. Valier here, and he can address it in more detail as to the type of analysis that needs to be done in this regard.
Happy to answer any questions. The use of force report will focus on drawing from criminology research, social science research, on trying to estimate best practices or estimate the quantity use of force, as well as suggest best practices based on other departments around the country and policy recommendations that the board can put out, and then as an annual report, we'll be able to track over time the implementation. I'm drawing from other boards who have similar reports that they do on an annual basis in order to try to have some continual improvements. It doesn't all happen at once. You can't change policy once and make sure it is sustainable. So having an annual report, I think, is very important in this case.
Thank you, Dr. Valier. Any comments and questions here? Mr. Martinez?
Thank you for putting together such detailed proposals. I just want, for the community members, can you remind us what the purpose of your research part of the Community Oversight Board is for?
Sure. So the way I see our role in the board is both to provide internal research on our own work, but to research policies and procedures of the criminal justice system overall in Davidson County. So we are not limited to working on policing issues, but more broadly. But we were brought together in order to have a in-depth research skill set that we can investigate using the records that are already available, the data that's produced on an everyday basis, in order to suggest policy recommendations, to understand how different parts of the community are being policed differently or exposed to the criminal justice system in different ways, and then suggest ways to move forward to improve equity in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion on the floor for the policy recommendations in front of us?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez, seconded by Dr. Lewis. Any focused discussion here? Thank you. With all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Valier. We appreciate it. Is there? Yep. Yeah, there is. So that was on. The traffic stop. We'll go to that one now. Dr. Valier, do you have anything else you'd like to share on that one?
For the traffic stop report, I think it's really important to mention that traffic stops have been a significant part of the organizing that led to the board. The Gideon's Army report set off quite a large movement that had already existed, but created some motivation that has led to the board. And I think it's given the changes that have happened over the past year with the policing project report that's come out, shifts in traffic stop practices, I think it's important for the board to to weigh in on how those changes are going and suggest more changes going forward.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. Is there a motion? There's a question before a motion, Mr. Kimball.
Can you talk about the community input portion of the studies?
Absolutely. So I want to first mention the Gideon's Army report had a large community input portion, which I think was very important to its success. We are hoping that we will be reaching out to community groups to do listening sessions about their experiences, and not just on traffic stops, but also on the use of force. So that's one aspect. We'll be reaching out to community groups to get input. We also will be reaching out to specific individuals to interview in order to get some stories and experiences. And we also have created a web survey that we'll be putting online that we can collect stories and feedback from people that are not making a complaint, so it's not a complaint, but it'll be a way for people to share their experiences where we're asking for if they feel comfortable to give us some contact information as well so that we can interview them. One of the things I often worry about is that if we only recruit through our networks, we won't reach out to all the parts of the community that we want to hear from. So hopefully that's another way that we can try to solicit feedback from people that we may not have heard from before.
Thank you. Dr. Lewis?
I just have a question under the proposed study. I address the quantity of stops, racial distribution of stops, spatial distribution, searches conducted, hit rate for contraband, correlation of stops with crime incidents and outcomes.
Yeah.
Would you also include the reason for the traffic stop?
Yes.
Okay.
So I did not enumerate that in that
Okay.
long list, but the reason for the traffic stop would be included.
Okay. It seems like it would be important.
Yeah, so that will definitely be a portion of that.
Okay, thank you.
The way I think about it is the report will go through each step of the traffic stop and the potential outcomes at each step.
Thank you, Dr. Blair. Any additional questions here? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Is there a motion to approve and let me just be clear, to approve the policy review request for the traffic stop policy advisory report proposal? Is there someone that seconds?
Second. We'll just keep it consistent.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Any focused discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstention, nay. The motion carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Valier. Next two things here, and I just want to be very clear. I don't have it in front of me, so I may be missing it, but it's okay if we move this to November. Mr. Pinckney, I know you've been working on the MNCO, the mediation program. Are you prepared to talk about that? I want to give it the time that it's due. So if waiting till November binds your hands from working, then we can talk about it tonight. Otherwise, I'm happy to move it to November 20th.
I think it's going to have to be moved to November. The Rules and Bylaws Subcommittee met on Monday and discussed it at length. And one of the suggestions from Ms. Marsh was that St. Louis has a very strong citizen police mediation program that isn't necessarily run through an oversight board, but through the city.
Okay.
So I've been in contact with them, and I have a phone conference scheduled with them for next week.
Okay. So we'll hold it to November.
I'll try to incorporate everything I can from their program and then bring that to this program as well.
Not a problem at all. We'll see you right before Turkey Day on it. So let's look at, and thank you very much for the thoroughness there and also for the hard work. I know you've been working very hard on that to turn it around. In front of us, we do have two things I just want to touch on. There's the minutes in front of us for the September 11th and the October 2nd meeting. In front of us. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Because while they're in front of us, and there was another set of minutes that Mr. Whedon was prepared to send to us today, and I didn't get back to him about sending it. I just felt it was best not to send us one more set of notes, or minutes rather, but for us to review them and have a bit of time. I'm inclined to hold on this. I'd like to hold the approval of the minutes here until November. And to do it all in totality here. and also allow more members of the board to have their eyes on it. And I'll put just a quick note to give people time there. And then last but not least is the MOU between the COB and the Davidson County Medical Examiner. Mr. Pinckney, do you have anything you'd like to share on that?
Thank you. So this was presented at the last board meeting. The board had a couple of small changes that they wanted before they were ready to approve it. Those changes have been incorporated, and I've worked with Mr. Dickerson in Metro Legal, and he was able to confirm that those changes would be fine with the medical examiner.
Okay.
Just to point those out, that the medical examiner would mark confidential documents as confidential. And then there was the issue with the citation for the board's confidentiality statute. I deferred to Mr. Cooper's wisdom, and we went with the Lexis statute instead of the Westlaw statute.
Gotcha.
But that's been incorporated as well.
Thank you very much. With those revisions, is there a motion to accept the changes in the approve the MOU?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth. Anyone second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell-Gooch. I hear Chief Turner as well. With that, any focused discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstention, nays, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, and I don't know, did we pass the sheet around today for public comment in space? And if we did not, I'll simply thank you very much. Thank you so very much. I want to acknowledge and, sorry, Mr. Martinez, but get that clock ready. It's important if members of the public, we'll start with Mr. Davis, could join us here in the mic that Ms. Marsh was previously using. We want to acknowledge the space and offer time for members of the public to address the board. Just a reminder here that we extend to each member of the public that signs up within the allotted spaces 3 minutes to address the board. We do not respond. However, Mr. Martinez does offer a 1-minute warning as the time is about to elapse. With that, Mr. Davis, we welcome you. Thank you.
My name's Austin Davis. This is the third time I've been before your board, and I appreciate the chair allowing me the freedom to speak. I'm usually organized, but right now I'm not sure what to say. I was glancing at the complaint case log and noticed that the complaint that I brought in September is closed. Tomorrow I was supposed to go to training for the justice program I think they've got for 2 days, something I've never done, but I was interested in going and want to go. Right now I'm kind of demoralized about it, not sure I want to go to it. I'm an average citizen, and the citizens of Nashville voted to put this board in because they wanted people to, we don't totally trust the police state. We do want some citizen activity, and we want to be able to have a check and balance on it. People like David Tucker and others, Timothy Hughes, people probably they're sitting over here that I don't know that have gone and, fought to get this board, wanted it here, and they wanted it here for a reason. And I think that from what I've seen and observed, I think the intentions of people on the board are good, and that they want to do their job. They seem to be getting torpedoed in many ways. But anyway, I digress. You're at a critical moment, I think. We're 2 blocks from where Steve McNair was murdered on July the 4th, 10 years ago. I talked about that last week and mentioned Richard Hillenbrand, who was the grand jury foreman on that case. An unsigned grand jury report that met with just a couple of people, and the case was closed, or not reopened. There are people, I'm sending information out in the city, and there are people that are sending me hate mail. I just think there's something wrong in this city if a Tennessee Titan quarterback can be murdered. And the police closed the case in 100 hours. And tonight, John Grisham's at NBA speaking. I'm banned from NBA and can't even go to the event. We both went to Ole Miss. And so I've reached out to the Tennessee Innocence Project, which is located across the street from where the murder was, asking them to look at what's going on. Anyway, If you want to know more, go to www.thesilentbell.org. And I hope you guys make it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I appreciate it. Ms. Ann Watkins? Is Ann Watkins present? If not, Mr. Richard Lish? Welcome, Mr. Lish.
My name is Richard Lish. I'm a citizen here in Nashville. And I wasn't going to speak until I heard Mr. Gooch bring something up, and he shook his head, and I could sense the frustration in him when he was asking about a legal department and the Metro Police Department. And then Chief Turner said they have a legal representative over there, but I think that legal representative handles search warrants and things of this nature. And I sense your frustration. I think a lot of people, I think all these board members have that frustration. Why won't Chief Anderson talk to us or whatever? I happen to like Chief Anderson. He's fired friends of mine, but I still like him. He has integrity and honesty for our city as Chief of Police. That goes a long way. But back on Mr. Gooch, and I don't know if Mr. Cooper, I've boasted on you and glad you were on this panel. I think being Attorney General, you have unbelievable expertise. And I'm kind of disappointed that you hadn't participated more verbally. I know you have with your pen or what have you. And you may be able to answer this question. Mr. Gooch asked the legal departments, everybody get together instead of Mr. Whedon going after Chief Anderson not acknowledging or what have you. It's all going to come down to the same boss, Mr. Gooch, is the legal director of Metro government. And I don't know if Mr. Cooper can comment on that or not, but why can't the legal director of Metro government get these people together? I don't understand that. But, and Mr. Cooper may be able to respond to that, or he may not be able to since he abstained, and I understand that. I understand that. But anyhow, I just want to express that, and I feel you with that. I saw your frustration when you shook your head. And talking about, you know, attracting bees with honey instead of vinegar, you know, I'd like to see this board take Tupac's attitude to Chief Anderson. I ain't mad at you. You had to do what you did. So thank you, but I feel you for that. And I don't know if the legal director can get all these people together or not and stop all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lish. And I will, as Chair, I'll just say that I appreciate your response here, but Mr. Cooper is actually not able to respond. His chair has kind of silenced him because we don't permit members of the board to respond here. So, so his weight as legal director just doesn't work around here right now. So thank you. We'll welcome. And I have to admit here, I'm going to have to say, is it Abe? They left? Okay. Tefeni. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. Well, that's all the public comments we have here. We'll move now to new business and announcements. Is there any new business or announcements? Mr. Cooper.
If we're at the end, I would just like to take a moment to say that this will be my last board meeting, that it has been just an honor to serve with the members of this board. I am amazed at how much this board has been able to accomplish during the 7 months that it has been in existence. And knowing the people on this board and having worked with them over these several months, I am quite confident in the future success of this board. So thank you for letting me be part of this.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. I will yield to anyone, Mr. Campbell. You saw I was already turning.
I mean, what I was going to say is to Mr. Cooper, now we can have a conversation and not have to worry about. So I'm very excited to be able to build a relationship with Mr. Cooper, because I don't think, if this board wasn't created, I don't think our paths would have ever crossed. So I do want to say I appreciate you for participating in this board in the way you have, and being able to see you work your magic with your pen is just like an art to watch. So I really appreciate you.
Totally right. Absolutely. Look, we have one announcement I need to make. Yep, okay. We have an announcement here about Saturday, and I just want to point out, I'm sure we'll get a reminder that Ms. Fitchard always sends us about Saturday. Please do communicate. Like I myself am working to make sure I can be there for the total space of time. But recently I had a death in my family, and will have to be with my family for at least part of that time in that space. So I just wanted to share that with the board. I do also just want to acknowledge here, look, that there will, because of this, and Mr. Cooper, we will congratulate you without a doubt. The citizens of Nashville will be well served with you in that space, and that goes without a doubt, right? But I do think, and I did ask Mr. Wheaton to connect with Mr. Pinckney and ensure that we have a proper understanding as a board of what the next steps would be to fill that vacancy. I would not want us to just simply wait several months here, and so we'll talk more about that in November. And I just want to highlight Mr. Campbell-Gooch's point here that the beauty of this board is that you actually sit shoulder to shoulder with people who you may have otherwise walked right past in this city, right? And so, and I think that's important to note because there are seats that will become vacant here on this board, and we truly hope that the people that have been lining these walls and been participants or been watching will raise their hand again and choose to serve, because it's certainly important. Mr. Wheaton, do you have an announcement there? And then Ms. Fitchard.
Just to remind everyone that we do have a training tomorrow, Thursday and Friday at American Baptist College on procedural justice and police legitimacy. It's free and open to the public from 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 p.m. Be at Lewis and Scruggs Hall at American Baptist College.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Wheaton. Mrs. Fitchard.
And I just wanted to give you a quick update. Our space will be available hopefully by the end of the month. We should sign a lease November the 1st, and then we have 30 days to move in. It's moved along really nicely. I'm excited about it, and so I just wanted to let you guys know. And once we get that space up and running, we'll have an open invitation for the community to come and celebrate with us. And I also wanted to thank my staff. The staff here has been great. I know that we talked a little bit about people having low morale. I don't really get that from the staff. I think that we are doing a tremendous job, and we have done and made great strides in 3 months, and I'm very excited about the work that we're continuing to do for the city of Nashville.
Thank you, Ms. Fitchard. I don't think I could have said it better myself. Thank you. With that, I accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. In a second, Ms. Ross. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 6:12. Thank you, everyone.